and I try and do it in the Odin programming language. Now, last week was kind of oh, wait a minute. Did YouTube... No, it looks like YouTube's good. That's weird. Just took a while to connect. So I don't know if any of that intro made it through, but whatever. We're just going to roll with it. So last week was kind of a mixed bag, which it tends to always be, but none of the issues that I had were really all that interesting or significant. And so that's just disappointing in one sense, because when I run into an issue, when I go to diagnose it and fix it, I want there to be some kind of enlightening effect after, not just have it be, oh, I understood what was going on. It's just I made a typo somewhere, and that's dumb because it's not a mistake that's going to really teach you anything. It's just, what else are you supposed to learn from? I shouldn't make typos. You know, you should just, that's just, the lesson there is you need to be good. But it's tough because we're doing a lot of programming live while Casey is doing it live in the past. And, you know, it's just this weird format that kind of creates this tension that's hard to unravel. But it is what it is. You know, it's the nature of the series as we're doing it right now. So we're going to go ahead and kick off day 77. Keep moving forward with this notion of adding a 3D kind of Z component to this 2D game that we've been building out engine components for with Casey. And we'll just keep moving right along until we get more into the rendering stuff, which again, as I keep harping on, is the stuff that I'm really excited for. So here we go.
So anyway, start recording. Hello everyone and welcome to Handmade Hero, the show where we code a complete game live on Twitch. No engine, no libraries. Everything is custom built from scratch, so we can see exactly how every single part of a game works from start to finish. No mysteries. We don't leave anything up to anyone else. We go in there and we do every last little bit ourselves. We basically are at a point today where we were just about to debug some stuff that we did yesterday, and it has to do with how we're keeping track of where players are, where enemies are in the world height-wise. Again, we wanted to kind of flesh out how our system was handling heights, because even though we were a 2D game, we want to be able to do stuff like multi-story rooms that you can walk up and down in, and other sorts of things that have to do with three-dimensional positioning, even though we're in a 2D game. And so we were just about to debug the code that we wrote yesterday to sort of treat things a little bit differently in terms of their 3D-ness. And so that's what we're going to go ahead and continue with doing today. But before we do that, I just want to remind everyone that if you have pre-ordered the game on handmadehero.org, you should have gotten a link in your email which allows you to download the source code. And if you want to follow along with today's video, what you want to do is unzip day 76's source code out of the source code zip. We're on day 77, so we're using what was done on day 76 as the starting point. So if you go ahead and unzip that into directory, you will be exactly where I am right now. And let's go see where I am right now. Now, during the pre-stream, somebody guessed what they think probably the bug was from yesterday, and it did sound like a pretty good guess. So we could go ahead and look there first, but let's before we go do that, let's quickly...
That reminds me, bugs. So there was this bug that I was seeing, and I'll see if I can recreate it real quick, last Friday, and I was worried that maybe it was a bug created by me alone on this single project, you know, not basically exclusive to the code that I have here. And in fact, actually, that's unfortunate. We're not in a place where I can actually even reproduce that bug because we've got this other issue now where Z isn't quite aligned with like the walls. So we can't actually pass through these walls, but the issue is that I was getting stuck on certain trees randomly. And I was worried that that was just exclusive to my Odin project code, but it turns out it's not. I went and checked the Zig project, and it's there too. So I don't know what the cause is for that bug, but I suspect that Casey has it too. But that's also most likely not what he's talking about right here. There's some other bug, which is probably the bug that we were just looking at, where we can't leave the room now because the Z and all that. So just thought I'd mention that because I was worried about that, and it turns out that's not an issue.
Just recap where, you know, what sort of the bug even was. Like, what was the actual problem that we were seeing, and what do we need to fix? And anyway, what I started to do yesterday was I started to make it so that the entities would be tracked in their Z so that they were essentially had full height information in them, and they were supposed to be starting on the ground at at the ground was supposed to be where their position was, and their height extends up above the position. Now, what we would have expected to have happen if we did that was, first of all, we're seeing like it does appear that the guy is lower than he should be, right? He should be stopping, like he's kind of sunken down. You can see he's supposed to hit this tree. We're on the bottom level here. He shouldn't be able to go that far into the tree, so it looks like he's a little bit lower down there. Same thing with stopping here. It looks like he's stopping too early, which means, again, he's probably sunk down to the ground. Since we don't have really a lot of 3D rotation or anything that we can do here, it's hard to see that. That's one of the things that we put on our to-do list, was to add some debugging visualization stuff so we can debug this more easily when we're actually developing the full game. So there's that. And the other thing is we're still colliding with the stairwell properly in all ways, which means that, you know, the guy is not really where we think he is probably. So what I want to do is go ahead and look for that bug, and what the person suggests on the pre-stream, and I think is a very good suggestion, was that the problem is we haven't actually gone and fixed our standing on the ground code to take into account the fact that entities have a height. And so we are actually putting their position down on the ground, but their position has to float above the ground because their height is sort of determined as a rectangle centered about their position. And so to draw this out for you, just to give you a little bit of an idea what's going on here, let me go ahead and move down here to day 77. What the person suggests on the pre-stream, and what I think, again, is a pretty good guess, is that if our entities look like this is a side view here, right? If our entities look like this and they've got, you know, a dimension that's their height here, right? This is their z dimension. In fact, I'll just stop saying width and height because it's kind of confusing. What if I just said this is their z dimension, right? That's how high they are in z. Then this distance here is going to be 1/2 of that z dimension, right? It's going to be 1/2 of this. And if that's the case, then when we say we want people to rest on the ground, we really want their position, right, minus 1/2 their z dimension to be resting on the ground. So the effective ground height for anyone is actually, you know, the ground plus 1/2 of their z. You know what I'm saying? That's where the ground actually is. The ground, you know, is down here. But if we were talking about what the ground was for the center position, it actually, you know, if the center would actually have to be up here and the ground would be here, right? You'd have to add that in. So anyway, another way of looking at that, I guess, would be effectively, you know, we want to think of the ground as being effectively up here, right? So anyway, that's a good suggestion for the bug. I think that's probably, if not the bug, it is at least a bug. And we can sort of take a look and see, we can fix that probably pretty easily. If we go down to where we're doing our ground code here, you can see that we've kind of got the ground being specified as not having taken into account, and we had to do here for ground handling, but that was for other stuff. Our to-do was basically, well, it doesn't even look like we did have a to-do here. This is just something that was on our main to-do list, right? Which is how do we do ground levels, right? So this to-do right here. So ignoring even that part, even if this was the real ground level, you can see that we don't take into account this entity rect at all when we're actually dealing with the ground level. And so when we do our handle overlap, right, that's not taking that into account. And when we do our stuff here where we actually do our Z supported, that stuff, that's not taking into account either. So basically nothing is taking that into account. And so what I think we want to do is we want to change this ground level into sort of a synthetic ground level. Now I just want to take a look at what the handle overlap code actually does, what it does to the ground level. Yeah, it looks like what it does to the ground level is it does this lerp here. And so what I'm going to have to do is basically adjust the ground level after we do our overlap testing, because the overlap testing produces what the actual ground level is, and then we want to adjust it based on the entity's dimensions after that fact, right? So what we want to do here is basically say the ground. Well, that's still not quite right. It looks like now we're actually colliding with the higher up entities. So it's like we have lifted off the ground. Oh, well, you know what? I wonder if we're actually on the top floor. That could actually be. I think we are on the top floor. So it's hard to say. I don't know. That's still not quite right, I don't think. I'm going to go ahead and step into that code. It's a little weird how we're colliding here. It's kind of a little nonsensical. I wonder if we will have to add some debug code just to see this, because I'd like to see it a little bit better than we're seeing it now. Let me see if we're on the top level or not. Yeah, so we are actually on the top level at this point. And our colliding...
Anthony said, caught a live and just wanted to say, been a fan for years, been growing with you, interested in watching this next chapter of your content. Glad you found something that you enjoy again. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, it's been something of an awakening of some like dormant part of my brain in a lot of respects, which is hard to really explain. What's going on with Twitch? It's telling me that my stream is in the red. Yeah, it's like my stream restarted. That's weird. Why did it do that? But anyway, like I was saying, yeah, it's just doing this thing, this little stream here where I get on and hack on some code that I want to work on that isn't specific to something, you know, for a job or for work, whatever, has like opened my mind to a whole lot of other stuff that I used to make more room for, but I just kind of compartmentalized for one reason or another, mostly out of a necessity to survive, you know, and try and provide for my family. But I'm realizing that I can do all of that and still create, and that is a very important thing to do. And this stream is weird because I'm not doing a whole lot of creation on my own. I'm like trying to build a tool set that I can use to then go and create. But that takes a long time, and it's a marathon for sure, not a sprint. But I'll just leave it at that for now and say that you can expect me to do something also new, but also familiar relatively soon. So I appreciate the words of encouragement. I really do. And you should definitely stay tuned for even more stuff in the coming year or so. I don't know how long it's going to take me to have this other direction I'm going in be developed enough to be able to share it. But it is something I'm working much more aggressively towards than I have in the past. And that's all I'll say about it for now. So yeah, let's keep going.
And up and down is a little bit, it's a little bit odd. You know what I'm saying? Definitely a little bit odd. But again, we have one other thing we need to debug, which is how we're drawing stuff. So maybe I'll go and debug the drawing stuff first too, and then we'll come back here and we'll make sure that things are kosher. But first, before I do anything else, I'm gonna step into that code and see what the ground computation is actually doing, just to make sure that it's somewhat reasonable. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So if we come in here, let me see what entity we're actually moving. I don't want to look at the Monstar, I want to look at the hero. So when we come in here, we've got the ground level specified at 0, which is what we expect. We have the entity's size, and that entity size is 0.62. So what we want to see basically is we expect the guy, if 0.63 divided by 2, if that is sort of the height off the ground that we expect the position to be hovering, what we want to see is that ground level come up to that, and that is exactly what it does. So we're going to go ahead and see that get set properly. So it looks like he is in fact resting on the ground as we would have expected. So we at least fixed the bug that the person in the pre-stream suggested. So let's go ahead and keep going with that. That may have been the only bug, and in the actual collision side of stuff, and it may just be the fact that we haven't really done due diligence with the drawing side of things. And if I go fix the drawing code, that will fix things. But it's hard to say. So let's go fix the drawing code since we know that needs to get fixed as well. Now the drawing code is totally placeholder at this point, which unfortunately does make it a little bit harder to debug because it's kind of helter-skelter. But you know. Again, you can't, you got to sort of take some of the good with the bad when you're just kind of working out how things are supposed to go. You don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning them up all the time. So you kind of have to deal with the fact that it's a little bit grumpier to go in and debug it, but hopefully it won't take us too much time. So the way that we're doing things currently, when we do our drawing, we do push bitmap calls, and the push bitmap calls basically say we want to draw a certain bitmap and we want to draw it at a particular offset from wherever the entity's position is. So what we actually do when we go to draw the bitmap, let me go ahead and load that up here. There we go. When we actually draw the bitmap, what we actually do, it looks like, is we use sort of the upper left corner to draw the bitmap, right? So if you take a look at what's going on here, we pass in an x and a y, and we go ahead and we take that x and y, and we expand it out by the bitmap's width and height, and that is how we determine the bounds for drawing. So that what we're passing in is the minimum corner, right? So when we're doing this here, when we say draw bitmap and we say center x, center y, it's kind of a little bit, I wonder if that's just a straight up bug that we never noticed just in general. If you look at how this is drawing, it's not the center that the draw bitmap code takes, because this is the call that we're calling here, and it's taking the minimum corner. So really what we would want to do here is we would want to offset that. Now, maybe, yeah, because if you look here, what we're doing is we're offsetting by our center point, like the thing that we picked as the bitmap centering point for whatever this for this piece was, but we never account for how big the bitmap actually was. So yeah, this is in no way the center point. So I think that's wrong just to start with. Even just our basic stuff that we were doing here for drawing was not entirely correct. So let's go ahead and think this through a little bit more. This code, the draw rectangle code, looks like it's actually working correctly. So I'm wondering now, why did these things ever line up at all? Did we bake in? Maybe we baked in the offset for the bitmap to get to the minimum corner into here, which doesn't seem, maybe that's what we did. Let's assume that's what we did, because otherwise we've got a bug there. So let's just take a look at what happens when we do a push piece call. So when we do a push piece call, it looks like we take, let's see, meters per pixel, offset x, offset y, minus a line. So yeah, I guess this is our saving grace here. We're actually baking in that alignment offset right in here. So really, this is not the center x, center y. This part of it right here basically baked in that offset that we needed to do, yeah, for the bitmap. So that's pretty janky. Like, I don't like that at all, because that means that the rectangle is drawing things from the center, and the bitmap code is drawing things from the minimum corner, even though they're both called center and computed in the same place. That's pretty suspicious, if you ask me. So I'm torn as to what to do here. Do I just fix the bug? Do I just go find and fix just the Z positioning bug? Or do I actually pull this code out and start to make a little bit of render stuff, you know, to kind of clean this up a little bit? It's a tough decision. It's a tough decision. I'm not sure which one I should do, which means I probably shouldn't do that yet. If it's a tough decision, err on the side of not changing things. All right, so if that's the case, then basically we're baking into the piece offset there what the actual offset is. And so I guess that should, in theory, mean that, yeah, the entity's position, since we're treating the entity's position as the base point where the guy was standing, because that's what we set the alignment to, since we're treating the entity's position as the base point, it does mean that we would need to displace that position downward by his height in order to get the actual ground point, right? So what I think we want to do here is our entity P, we really want that to just be a different point altogether than the point that it is. We want to do our like entity base P or something, and we want that, again, to be whatever that entity position was, plus half of the entity's dimension in Z. That same thing that we were aligning, I'm sorry, minus, that we were aligning the ground with, we want to align the drawing with as well, because that's what we had treated all of the rest of the drawing as being based around, right? Now, it's unclear that everyone would want to do that, but I think pretty much everyone would want to basically be about ground points, except for maybe flying things. So I don't know. We could introduce something later on which actually does, I don't know, some kind of mumbo jumbo that allows you to specify where you want the drawing point to be based around or something like this. But it seems like that's probably a reasonable thing to do at the start. So let's go ahead and do that for now. Let's take a look at the entity P, and make sure that it's not actually being used anywhere else. It's not. So let's take a look. We should maybe. This guy should probably use it as well for the shadow alpha, even though the shadow alpha is not particularly interesting. It's just kind of a placeholder thing. But if we want to get the shadow alpha right, we also want this to be done in the exact same manner. So that's entity P div.z, right? Initializing. What is the problem? Entity base P. Oh, because we actually want that to be this. We only want to subtract out of.
Okay, I was wondering how this was supposed to work, because he turns this into a vector 3, but then he's just doing this with, you know, the Z coordinate, which doesn't make sense because that doesn't give you a vector back. We take the whole thing here and subtract only in the Z. It's kind of weird how having array programming at my fingertips makes me like want to think about things differently. I almost want to I want to modify just the Z by itself, because that's just more explicit. And then I could just do it like that, right? Now I don't have this like extra noise hanging around. I just get my base P, adjust the Z, and then here where he does that, this is off of the entity base P now, the entity base PZ, and then yeah, same thing with all of these. Not that these coordinates, you know, the X and Y are not any different, but at least that way we're making all these changes off of the same thing, I guess, just to keep it consistent. And I guess that was pretty much it. And then there was that other the alpha, that other line where he's setting that. Is this the right thing? Is this inside of the piece group stuff? Okay, no, this is, yeah, we're setting the shadow alpha, but we have this alpha up here, and that is going to be this minus entity dim Z, and then multiplied out like that. Okay. Now I think we're caught up.
The Z. All right, so let's see. Now that we're drawing things properly, well, that does appear to have been the problem. Now that we're drawing things properly, we do seem to be correctly stopping at the location where we would have expected to stop. We do seem to be able to walk through things the way that we would expect to be able to walk through them. So,
okay, let's see if I can do the same thing. I cannot go up the stairs anymore, which is obviously a problem, but it does look like the drawing is happening the way we want it to. I guess I could just fly up to this level, right? And then see if I can go through there now. Yep, looks good. So now we just have to fix this problem that has been introduced with the stairs no longer working. Yeah, we collide with them when we're down in the first level, but the stair just doesn't seem to exist up here.
That is looking pretty good. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Yeah. And so I think the only thing that I would say is we are now back, assuming that that actually is the last of the bugs that we had there, we now have to deal with our problem that I was talking about before with the stairwell, where the stairwells will never actually collide with because they only go up to the exact height of the ground above them. So yeah, let's let's go ahead and do that. So one thing that I would like to do is take those stairwells though, and I'd like to add 2 rectangles to them, so that when I'm drawing them, I draw one rectangle at the bottom and one rectangle at the top of the stairwell. In order to do that, I will need some way of offsetting these, which I think we already did. So I believe that what we did with our push rect is usually that there's an offset here. So ZC, I forget how this stuff works because I remember it was all super hacky stuff that we did. Entity offset Z, units pixels time offset Z. So basically what's happening in the push rect is we don't allow an offset Z in the, oh no, we do. There it is, it's right there. We do allow the offset Z in the push rect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take the entity's dimension in Z and I'm gonna offset a second rectangle by whatever that is. And I'm gonna go ahead and make the bottom one be colored slightly differently from the top one, and that'll just let me, I don't actually know why I stopped the game. That'll let me figure out, those should be moving. That's a little busted. That's not right. What's going on there? Why has that happened? So we're drawing this one at a Z offset for push rect, but it doesn't look like that's actually getting used because we should have seen those moving differently, basically. That is because we don't actually, yeah, you'll notice our Z fudge here. So the Z fudge is only used to compute that ground point, but we don't actually use that offset Z to actually do anything with the X and Y otherwise, right? That strictly lifts things up off the ground. I say. Well, I'm not sure what we really want to do about that then. What I really want to do is make 2 pieces, basically push 2 different pieces for the stairwell. I'd like to push a separate piece that's at a separate location, but unfortunately that's not something that looks like is really super possible for me to do. Again, because this code is pretty darn janky. And I'd like to leave it janky, but I just wanted to be able to get a little more mileage out of it. Because I don't really want to go digging around in here. I don't think it's super productive for us to do that. So let's take a look and see if there's any way that I could do something simpler that would allow us to, set things up a little bit differently. So the way that this actually works, I guess, is when it does the set of pieces, when it unpacks them, it looks like it sort of always does the grounded, and it could, if we wanted to, we actually could roll this in here. Like we could actually put this in here, right? And we could actually optionally use the Z offset directly above. So maybe we'll go ahead and do that for now. Let's just see what would happen if we were to do that. So let's assume that I took this out of here.
All right. I didn't quite catch what he did with it. I think he just, all he did was, if I remember right, add in the zeros for the offset, and then the Z dimension gets added to the offset, and then instead of yellow, he made it orange. What was orange again? RGB. So was it like this? Something like that? Yeah. Okay, so then down in here, all of this we drop into here. And of course that's gonna screw up my formatting. No! I'm poor on editor real estate here. Okay, so we have that all in there, and then this needs to get moved over too. And then we grab out our piece. Okay. Right. Yeah, I can see all of these places now where using a dynamic array for stuff like this is the way to go. I should really make time one of these weeks to just flush a bunch of that stuff out, because it'll clean things up nicely enough that I think it's worth doing. And then, like he said, when we're calculating the center, I think he took the pieces offset Z off, right? Because we calculate entity ground point Y plus the offset Y, and then add that to the entity's Z coefficient times whatever the entity's Z value is in pixels. So we just get rid of that, and now I think we're caught up.
Right. And when we actually do the entity base PZ for that Z fudge, right, I'm actually going to go ahead and I guess we'd leave this in here. Right. When we do this Z fudge, I'm actually just going to go ahead and add that in here. So that's the effective Z of the thing. Whatever the offset Z is, it'll actually get used. Now, again, this causes some problems, so I'm not really sure that I want to always have that work that way. Yeah, so that's one problem, right? That's hilarious.
Looks like the familiar is wigging out there, but for this line right here, what did he do? Just added the base P to whatever the piece, but I don't have the piece, do I? Yeah, did he have to move that? Yeah, he had to move that up. Okay. So we throw that up there, and now we have the piece offset Z. And then if we do that, we should have a freaky familiar. Yeah. Okay. And then our orange staircase is gone. Of course, we can't actually go up this one. That's still broken. Hopefully Casey's is too.
Again, this causes some problems, so I'm not really sure that I want to always have that work that way, right? That's hilarious. That's pretty funny. So I still don't see where that yellow guy went. I don't know. That's pretty funny though. I don't think that was not what I had intended to have happen. That was pretty funny. So I'm trying to figure out exactly why that is. Okay, that's actually because that's in meters to pixels, right? I think based on what's happening right now, just how much cruft there is in here, I feel like this is probably a good sign that I probably am going to have to go ahead and pull this out and actually do some real rendering code, because this is kind of just piling hacks on top of hacks at this point, and you know, it's going to create more problems, I suspect, for us than it saves for us to not dive in there. But I believe what's happening there, right, is meters to pixels gets pre-multiplied by offset Z, and we want it to not be, right? We want offset Z to actually get multiplied by meters to pixels later, so that we can do that multiplication separately, right? So we would want meters to pixels to just happen here, oops, like so. Because that would cause it to be multiplied twice. Like the offset Z was getting multiplied by meters to pixels, but then it's getting multiplied by meters to pixels again when we multiply that Z fudge in here to do sort of that pseudo parallaxing effect that we're using to see where stuff is. So there we have what things are looking like, I guess. Not super sure how accurate it is there. I have to think about this.
Okay, I did not track. So we had, I think he took this multiplication out. Is that what he did? If we take, yeah.
Like so. Because it's already, that would...
No. Oh, yes. Yeah, so we take it out of... Okay. We want it on the X and Y, but we don't want it on the Z. Well, we could just say .xy, right? And then that actually kind of works out better. Yeah, that's pretty nice, actually. So then we just do this. And then that should be good. What is illegal about this? You want me to say that this is a V2 explicitly? That's fine, I can do that. So we have our line... Yeah, which is a V2. So we get X and Y out into pixels. And then the Z is just the Z. Yeah. And we set it all right there. And then back over here, he throws it in front of here.
Separately, right? So we would want...
Right? Just right here. Game state, meters to pixels. And I guess we can just do that. And then that should leave us in a good spot, I think. So far, so good. Hold on while I ban this bot. I need a... I like how they throw in the special characters there. So even if I was motivated enough to set up an auto ban thing, it wouldn't catch it because of the special character. Oh, hey, Nutella. Thank you for the resub. Glug, glug, glug. That's right. We're still glugging all these weeks later. Okay. Oh my god. Well, something is very wrong with that. I don't know what I did wrong to deserve that hyper jump. That's unfortunate. Yeah, that's weird. Why is that happening? Doesn't look like the familiar is doing what it's supposed to do either, so we might be in a bad place at this point. Hard to tell. But it sure looks like I did that right. Oh no. This needs to be times... man, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Piece, offset Z, and then... Oops. And then that gets added to the rest of this. I thought he took that out. That's weird. I didn't see him add it back in. Okay, so maybe now we'll be okay. Yeah, that looks like the staircases are in the right spot. We're jumping not into the stratosphere, and now I've jumped into the hitbox of the monster, so I can never leave. But that's okay. One thing at a time.
Like the offset Z was getting multiplied by meters to pixels, but then it's getting multiplied by meters to pixels again when we multiply that Z fudge in here to do sort of that pseudo parallaxing effect that we're using to see where stuff is. So there we have what things are looking like, I guess. Not super sure how accurate it is there. I have to think about this a little bit more carefully. But basically, yeah, you can kind of see what's going on here. And if I were to go up the stairwell, which I guess I can't do at the moment for whatever reason, I'll have to go and debug the stairwell code. Oh, because the stairwell code is also going to have to use that ground point as well. So yeah, basically we'll have to debug that, but I'm not sure. It feels like, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like this guy is still in the wrong place, right? It should be hovering above that guy when it's roughly in the center of the screen. So I do wonder a little bit. I wonder about how we're going to do this sort of drawing long term. Like, what happens if I just kill this right now, right? And so that it's always just using that Z fudge. It's a little bit weird because, in theory, that makes it a little bit harder to do some things. But if I look at it, yeah, you know what? That looks much more correct. So basically, if we don't have the offset in there, if we don't have the offset offsetting the Y anymore, and we just use it as a straight Z offset, then it seems to work relatively well. But I just don't know if that's going to hold up because since all the art is isometric, I mean, basically what that Z fudge is doing, right?
Hold on, I want to make that change that he made. He took out all of that and just put it, yeah, so dang it. Yeah, this just goes away, and then we're back to where we want to be, which I thought it looked weird. The staircases looked like they were in a weird spot anyways before. It also looks like I have the color swapped. I think the bottom floor representation of the staircase is supposed to be orange, and then the yellow is supposed to be the top. So I was in the push rect calls, so if we, is that right? Let me actually just, yeah, I think so. Yeah, because that's, oh, I don't know. Hold on. Let me make sure I got this right. Orange on the bottom, yellow on the top. Yeah. Too easy to get confused when little details like that are different. So yeah, we're looking good here.
So basically, if we don't have the offset in there, if we don't have the offset offsetting the Y anymore and we just use it as a straight Z offset, then it seems to work relatively well. But I just don't know if that's going to hold up, because since all the art is isometric, I mean, basically what that Z fudge is doing, right? If you think about what's going on, we've sort of got a little coordinate system happening here, where we're saying, you know, we've got something and its position relative to the camera center is in a certain location. And what the Z fudge is doing is it's saying, well, the higher up in Z the thing is, multiply that vector by some coefficient of based on that Z height. So as things get higher, they exaggerate their distance from that center point, right? Which is essentially just a scaling effect. So it's just scaling, making things more distant, but it's scaling them up when they would be closer to the camera, right? And because Z comes at you. But there's kind of two competing things here. One is that, but the other is when we've got, you know, a dude or something, he is drawn upright in Y, right? He's not really drawn in Z, meaning if he was right, if this is the screen and he's standing right in the middle of the screen, you don't see his head and his body directly under it, like Hotline Miami or something like that. Our art style is this way, which is like sort of isometric, right? It's rotated in this sort of false perspective way because it lets you get a better look at the character and its face and so on. And that's why, you know, you do that instead of drawing everything top down. So we do have this kind of fundamental mismatch there, but that's just something that 2D games have always had to fight. There's really no wrong or right solution to it. It's just a problem that you kind of have to deal with if you want to do the art style that way. So yeah. So I think now, I guess, I mean, I think that is roughly correct. I mean, and I can still hop up to the next Z level just like we used to be able to do. There's no ceiling. You can just hop up there. So things do seem to be working relatively well. So maybe what we should do is just go ahead and finish our stairwell there, get it collision detecting properly, and deal with the fact that it needs to kind of extend up above the ceiling a little bit so that we can walk back down it. So let's go ahead and do that. That seems like a pretty achievable, pretty simple thing. So if I go ahead in here to Handmade Sim Region, again, what I think we have to do is when we're doing our calls here for handle overlap and speculative collide and stuff. Speculative collide, if you remember, was there to let us go onto the stairwell only in circumstances where we would be entering from the bottom or the top of the stairwell, and not so that we couldn't just walk right onto the side of the stairwell and pop up to wherever we should be or down to wherever it was. And so if you take a look at what's happening here, that's basically using that ground height again versus the movers PZ. So I think basically what we want here, again, is probably to just go ahead and introduce for our sim region, since we're using it everywhere, I think what we probably want to do is to introduce a call like get entity ground point, right? Because since everyone is using this, and I don't want to keep computing it in everywhere, because then if I want to change it, how it's computed, it'll be hard for me to do that later. And to really, it's not even so much to be hard for me to change it in a lot of places, because that's not the problem. It's to know where those places are. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and do a get entity ground point call so that I have you know, an entity, and that's just going to return for now that thing that we were computing in other places, right? So that's going to return the entity's position, and then it's going to offset that position by a vector that just moves it down by whatever the entity's dimension was in Z, again multiplied by that half to just go halfway the distance down. And so that way I'll just call get entity ground point everywhere that we...
Same thing here, really, right? Like, I just want to say that the result is the entity's position, and then we'll modify that accordingly, rather than adding a vector that's empty when all we want to do is change the Z coordinate. So we'll say that this plus equals negative 0.5 plus entity's Z dimension, right? I think that's good. Also, it was subtle just a moment ago, but he basically pointed out that we want to start working on the renderer really soon, because a lot of this, you know, funky kind of just trying to plug in the entities dimensions correctly with respect to how like the actual bitmaps are drawn on the screen, it's creating all of this weirdness that just means it's time to just start working on the renderer, which is great. That's the point I've been trying to get to. Point I've been most looking forward to since I even started this. So we're getting real close now.
Would have been doing that. So like any time that we have that .z in here, like here, we'll go ahead and say that get entity ground point call gets us back the ground point, right? And so let's take a look at where we were doing that entity dim z sorts of things.
I just want to make sure I tracked that correctly. So instead of this, that's interesting because that's not what is being calculated up there. But yeah, and then what does he replace it with? Just
entity ground point call gets us back the ground point.
Oh, okay. So he's still taking that value, but instead of it being this right here, it's the result of this. Get entity ground point and entity. Yeah, and so that way we're not doing that. Calculation in a bunch of different places. Why is it saying this is undeclared? Get entity ground point. Is it because I see this needs to be mover, right?
Right.
And okay, now what are you expecting? A numeric type. Okay. Well, is it because we need to get the z out of that?
The ground point call gets us back the ground point, right? And so let's take a look at where we were doing that entity dim z.
Yeah. So I think this is right, but he's not calling the z, or he's not accessing the z on that, because this is giving us back the vector 3. So yeah, I don't know exactly, but that's not going to work when he tries to compile it.
These sorts of things. So in here, I guess it's a little harder for us to use this. This is actually something that really we can use primarily here. Get entity ground point, like so, and that'll be our entity. That is the entity, is it not? Yes, that'll pass our entity there. So really what we'd have to do here if we wanted to compute the offset using get entity ground point.
Let me go ahead and make that same change. So down where we're drawing, right here, that right there, right? That should be just this call. And then it'll do that z calculation for us. Okay. And then over in the sim code again, we still have that issue, but okay. And then over here, well, would you just call this, but then call or use the z off the result? Kind of seems that way.
Is we'd have to say get entity ground point for the entity, and we'd have to use the entity's position and say, all right, we want to move the ground to where the entity is, right? So we want to basically move to that location. So what we would do is just take the two z's and subtract them there, right? And that would let us, oh, well, actually, I guess it's the other way around. So let me draw that out. So I wanted to rewrite this expression in terms of getting the entity ground point. The reason that I wanted to do that was so that I wouldn't have multiple places computing it in different ways. So that way, if I change this, I know it'll work, right? And so the way that I was going to compute that was I was just saying, all right, well, I essentially have an entity position here, right? And I have an entity ground point, which is here, right? And so what I want to do is I want to solve for, I want to basically take wherever the ground was, right? So here's where the ground is currently. And I want to add something to it that moves it up to where it should be for the entity's position. So what I want to do there is I want to take the position minus the ground, right? I want the thing that goes from the ground to the position. And that's, that's vector subtraction, right? So I want it to be in that order. And that will give me that ground displacement that I actually wanted. Oh, whoops, that's not entity, that's mover. There we go. What are you complaining about, sir? Oh, right, we need to know the z of the ground point. So yeah, that should hopefully restore our going up stairwell code, and it does. But going...
Okay. Sounds like that's not going to quite fix the going down the stairwell issue, like he was just about to say, but I want to get to the same place where he's at, and I guess, what am I looking for? It's the mover, yeah, where else are we getting that, or calling that? Yeah, right here, and we want the Z there. Okay, so now, if all went well, I should be able to go back up the stairs, rather than flying up to the next level. Oh, that's weird. What is going on with the shadow? And we're not going up the staircase properly, so that's bad. That's pretty bad. Okay, so that all looks right. And then up here, this is still fine. It's just the entity's position plus, oh. Yeah, I mean, that should be, that's saying the same thing, right? We're adding this negative. Oh, this should be times. Why did that become a plus? Maybe that was my whole issue. Nope. We have another problem. But at least my shadow isn't inverted. Looked like it was negative.
Z of the ground point. So yeah, that should hopefully restore our going up stairwell code, and it does.
Damn it. Okay, well, let's make sure that that other place where I was doing this, yeah, this should have been a plus equals. I was looking at that and I was like, was that a plus equals before, or are we just overriding it? Now I think we're good. That, yeah. Hopefully we're good. Yep, okay. But can we go down? No, we cannot, because now the ground can't go lower. We can't descend, but all good.
Yeah, that should hopefully restore our going up stairwell code, and it does. But going down should presumably still not work, because now our collision detection is actually working properly, or at least we've debugged as many of the bugs in it that we could find so far. And so what that means is that we will no longer collide with things whose max is right at the ground level, because that is something that's technically on the floor below us. So what I think we want to do, and again, I don't really know, but it's the first thing that comes to mind, what I think we want to do is we want stairwells to extend up above the ground a little, so that it's clear that that's something that you collide with when you're moving along that ground. And so when we add the stairwell, I'm thinking that basically, we just say, all right, whatever that dimension was, maybe it's a little bit more. So it extends up just a little bit above how big a floor is, and see if that helps us out. And so again, it looks like our stairwell is working properly now. We can't get at it unless we come at it from the bottom. And then when we're up on the top of it, well, it's close, but no cigar. It's now colliding with it properly. Again, it's that yellow one now, right? It's the top of the stairwell. It's colliding with it properly, but it wasn't really letting me get onto it. It was too high up. I wonder if that's because it actually is too high up. What was our tolerance level there? So I think what we need to do, and this is something that I wanted to do before, I think I even mentioned it on a previous stream, is I would like, because we're sort of, the step height, in fact I did exactly the step height, so you can see what's happening. That's pretty funny. You win some, you lose some. So the way that we had our code written was basically to say, okay.
I got a little bit lost in the sauce there, checking to see if this was doing what it should be doing. Okay, then he goes and looks at the step height. This changed to, yeah. So we are able to go back down, but we kind of have to hop onto the staircase in order for it to do what it should do. And then, what do you say about the, where was the step height thing? That was in the sim code. Speculative. Collide, and then, yeah, this right here. So what was going on there?
That's because it actually is too high up. What was our tolerance level there? So I think what we need to do, and this is something that I wanted to do before, I think I even mentioned it on a previous stream, is I would like, because we're sort of, the step height, in fact I did exactly the step height, so you can see what's happening. That's pretty funny. You win some, you lose some. So the way that we had our code written was basically to say, okay, when somebody is coming along, and let's say that they're maybe I'll draw this diagram a little bit isometrically, right? Like so. So here is our stairwell, right? When somebody is coming along this way, what we basically said is, well, what's the distance here, right? What's the step that they would have to take from where they're standing to where the stairwell thinks the height should be? And really, I'm drawing these as stairs, but really they're ramps. That's what we've implemented. We don't stair step down. Right now we glide down. So really they're ramps. But either way, it doesn't matter. So it's a ramp and the stairwell doesn't really matter. And what we were saying is, well, we're not going to let it, if it's any more than a tenth of a meter, you can't do it. So you've got to kind of come up here and go where the stairwell is. You can't just hop down onto it, right? And I guess it's arbitrary. Maybe we'll change that in the future, but that's what we implemented. So I made the stairwell go 1.1 meters up over the ground, which meant that if you tried to board it at the place where you're supposed to, you would be able to get on. But it does mean, in theory, that if I left it that way, you should be able to get on it right at the sort of a little bit further down it. Oh, well, I guess I got to go up the stairwell first. So kind of right here on the side. Yeah, and that's exactly what you can do. Yeah, so that's kind of busted. And you get a little popping there, too, when it kind of goes up and down it. So we want to fix that. And I think the way that I would like...
Okay, his also does that negative thing, the shadow. That was probably hard to see, although for some reason his looked yellow instead of white, although maybe mine was yellow too and I just wasn't paying attention. So we go up the stairs and then we can hop off on the next floor, but I should be able to, yeah, there we go. I guess you can't really see it all the time because of just the order things are being drawn in, but I think I can see it now. Yeah, my shadow turns yellow. Oh, that looks white to me. But I guess I should just take comfort in knowing that his is doing basically the same thing. Oh, it's yellow if I'm going up. You see that now behind my little dude. It's yellow going up, but when you come back down, it's white for some reason. Oh, now it's yellow again. Oh, it's just whatever the color is of the... yeah, you can see it's... well, is that white? I don't know. Not worth thinking any more about because he's seeing the same thing basically, but it's all good news. Is the whole point.
To fix that, something I mentioned before, I would like the ramping, so the thing that computes the position that you're going to do, I would like that to be independent of the collision rectangle. So I'd like the stairwell collision rectangle to be something that can be conservatively large, but then that sort of, so it occupies two stories almost, right? But then when it computes the ground, it doesn't use it doesn't use the position way up at the top. It just uses what it knows is one story or some other value that we could specify later. Like we could put it in the entity if we want stairwells to be varying distances, right? So what I really want here is instead of min z max z, I really want it to be something more like min z and min z plus the tile height or something like this, right? But for now, since there's really no reason not to, and this will be good because when we're doing our entity systems, it's just another thing that we can look at. We could just say only for stairwells, and we could just say, total like walkable height or whatever, something like that, right? And then walkable height, it's just this, right? We're taking the region's minimum z, and we're going ahead and doing that. So, and in fact, we could even write this. We don't really even need a lerp here at that point. If we've got the barycentric y, we can just use this expression to say we basically are going to be however much up we go on the walkable height, right? And so now
sounds like my poor wife is putting one of the kids to bed for nap time, and the other one decided now was exactly when they wanted to be upset. It's weird how they just kind of know when you're trying to do something else and you can't, be there right at that second when they want you, because like you just have no choice. You have something else that needs to get done, because if it doesn't get done, the situation just gets worse. It's like a never-ending cycle of trying to stay ahead of chaos. What's going on here? Okay, so this should be off of the entity's walkable height, and then where are we gonna set that? Or is it mover? Or should it be the region's walkable height?
Now, when we add a stairwell, we can specify how far up we want it to go. And so we can say that I don't know, is this the best way to do this? Entity sim dot walkable height. That's going to be equal to the game state world tile depth in meters. Right? So now its collision rectangle is kind of separated in terms of its height from that wall.
Just want to make sure I'm setting the right thing. Setting the sim entity's walkable height to be that tile depth in meters.
The rectangle is kind of separated in terms of its height from that walkable height. Oops, and that's got to be the region's walkable height.
Okay, that's what
and so I think that should solve our problem there. I think. Let's find out. So we're still blocked on all sides of the bottom stairwell. We walk up it. There we go. Try to walk down it. It's still a little janky. Why is that? You can still see there's a lip.
A good example of negative entropy. Dude, that's my whole reason for being, is I'm trying to wrangle entropy wherever I see it. Because I want things to be ordered. That's just generally how I am. But in some ways more than others. Like right now I got this stack of books over there that I need to deal with. The reason they're over there and not like in the bookcase that's right there, and there's another identical bookcase to my left over here on the other side of the same wall. All of the bottom shelves are empty because the oldest comes in and tears all the books off the shelves, or just otherwise messes with them, might start tearing pages out of them, that sort of thing. So they're out there, out of his reach, so that he can't demolish them. And that is more acceptable order than the alternative, which is that he's just destroying books. So I need to deal with all the books that are loose over there and move them into boxes, because I don't have time to be reading books right now. At least not all of these books. Most of these books aren't even mine. They were left here for me. But anyway, that's besides the point. It's just, yeah, I'm always trying to stay ahead of the chaos wherever I can. And for the most part, we're successful, but not always. Sometimes just somebody's got to cry. Sometimes somebody has to cry.
Like, what's going on there? That's crazy. Check that out. Is that freaky or what? So something's a little busted there with just at the very end, we've got a bug. I'm not sure what the bug is, but we've definitely got one. So let's go ahead. That's funny. Let's go ahead and see what's going on there. Oh, wait. Is there any kind of... So yeah, so we've got two different computations for the ground height. That looks like what's really going on here. Yeah. So we need a function, which is get stair ground, something like this, right? And again, this is really good. I really like where this is going, because again, we're going to have to do our entity system at some point. And you can kind of see that we don't really have much built up. We've got some stuff, but like the swords, the hit points, that stuff. The more stuff we can pile in here, the fattier we can make this, the better it will be when we go to do it. Like, we want as much stuff happening with these entities as possible, because that is what's going to allow us to make a good entity system, right? If we try to design the entity system before having enough stuff in here, we'll probably make mistakes and have to constantly keep redoing how we're doing stuff. And so, you know, essentially that's really the whole thing about how handmade entity.h should continue to grow. We want to start having, you know, stuff that's very specific to all different kinds of entity types, so that we can see later when we want to break it apart and make it more usable and maintainable, right? So let's see here. So the region rect looks like, do we always have that?
Hold on, I need to get caught up here. Was that this call? No, it's that other call in speculative collide, where we get this, and this is just going to be the result from this, and we wanted this to return a float. Is that right? Okay, and then we just assign that result, return it, and well, this isn't quite right, is it? There's a region rectangle. Is he just going to throw all of that stuff in here?
It looks like in both cases we do have that. Although it looks like this is essentially doing all the same computations, right? These are all exactly the same. So I think we really just want to make this whole thing, right? Am I right about that? It looks like we really just want this whole thing to happen in here, right? So we want the entity to generate its region rect. We want it to compute its barycentric coordinates. We want it to compute that ground height, but this is the one I actually want, right? I want to compute that ground height. Let's see, and I got to pass in here as well whatever the sort of the standing p, whatever the place is that or like entity ground point, right? Oh, and that's a bug as well. So we have yet another problem, right? This mover p should also use that in both cases, and it's not, right? Because in theory, we would want it to always use that ground point again. Yeah. So this is good. This will get rid of a lot of bugs for us, because this was just not very good code at all, because it was written with a different set of assumptions, and we want to kind of solidify that quite a bit. Also, I suppose this should really be in here as well, right? Okay.
Okay. Let me That was a lot. So the get stare ground call, it does need to take in the entity, and it also needs to take in the ground point right here. But all of this, yeah, he's gonna have to change that. I guess I'll go and get the get entity ground point call. Why can't I go to definition for that? Obey me, editor. Okay, so we got that in there now. This, well, we don't have that anymore. So how are we going to use that to calculate the result when we do the speculative collide? I guess technically he never got rid of that. And that should be that. But we don't have that anymore. So this is... I guess I just should not have deleted that code yet. I need to see where he's going with this. Okay, so that's good. This is still wrong, but that's okay. And he didn't change... whoops. He didn't change this, any of that. So yeah, we just have this new entity stuff going on. Okay. Okay, let's see if we can get this dialed in here.
That's actually the 15-minute warning since we started 10 minutes late, so we've got a fair bit of time to play with still. Okay, so this is good. Get entity ground point. We know it is pretty much correct. Get stair ground. Let's walk through this a little bit more carefully. We need to get whatever the stairway's region is. We then need to get the barycentric coordinates for whoever it actually is, so entity ground point will be done there. We then have to compute what we actually think the ground is, and then we have to return it. And that looks, let's see, let's call this at ground point, right? Like so on. Yeah. Now, I guess technically, now that I think about it, that wasn't really a bug. I mean, it sort of was, but because we were only using the barycentric y, it didn't matter whether we were passing the ground point or not, right? So it wasn't really a bug. I was a little hasty there. That wasn't a bug. That was just sort of a little sketch. But you don't really need to pass that ground point, I guess. So really, this could even be a v2, right? You don't really care what it is. And so, yeah, what can I say? Anyway, so let's keep going. So let's convert these two routines. So handle overlap. This is basically just going to call get stair ground. And for completeness, I'm still going to just call get entity ground point in case it would displace it in x and y someday. You know, I mean, it could happen. Probably won't happen, but you never know. So I'm gonna go ahead and call that anyway. So we'll pass the region. We'll get that ground point back. This stuff can just basically go away entirely. We are in the stairwell code again.
Okay, now I see how this is coming together. This really should have always been region. It's just weird because when we see region everywhere else, I'm thinking of it in terms of the simulation region, but I guess when he does that, he's calling it a sim region. So anyway, it's the region that the mover is colliding into, which is just some other entity's dimensions in 3D space in our 2D game. I think that's all right. That all sounds correct when I say it out loud. Okay, so then we pass in the mover. And everywhere I see test entity, well, we can get rid of all of that, right? Yeah, that's what he did. And then we just do that. And then that's good. Okay. And then this here, yeah, this is going to mess up things for this call a little bit, unless we want to also return the barycentric rectangle coordinates, right?
Here, don't need this, don't need that. And we can go ahead and I should probably leave that needs work comment in because it probably does need work. But anyway, so what we want to do here is or is I wonder why are we testing both of these things? Does anyone know why we're testing both of these things? Was that just because we hadn't worked out all the code before and so we were just cheesing it? Because it feels like the only criteria for stepping onto or off of a stairwell would be how high you have to step, right? I don't feel like that code needs to be there. I don't get it. So I'm going to go ahead and if that out temporarily. I feel like that's the entirety of the code, right? Like it should just be that. It should just be that you got to be within the step height. I don't know. That's all I got. So let's try that first. So let's do mover ground point equals get empty ground point mover. We will then say mover ground point z. We'll compute the ground here. Get stair ground, and we will go ahead and do mover ground point and pass the stairwell. We should also probably assert here, just for fun, that the entity that we're trying to get the stairwell level for actually is a stairwell. Because, you know, someone could get into a weird situation where they try to call it in some other case. And
well, I probably have messed something up here, but we'll see soon enough. So we want the stair ground is the region because the stair is not moving. But where we see test entity, I gotta change that to be region real quick. Oh, and then we're just not passing in. Did that default to something? No, he passes in that mover's ground point. Okay. It's so weird. This stuff was like so before. Let me just get rid of that. And then this, I don't even know what to do about this. I guess I can just comment it out like this. Like we just added that on, what was that, Friday? And the very last day, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, I assumed he had a good reason to add it, but I can't even, I'm hopeless to describe why that was added in. Okay, let me do that. And this, well, we don't have a ground here, so maybe what I should do is just comment all of that out. Oh, we still want that on its own line. Okay, so get rid of that. Leave that like that. And we might be good. But I want to wait and see if Casey's is working now.
A stairwell. Because, you know, someone could get into a weird situation where they try to call it in some other case. And we don't really want that. So yeah. So that fixed our problem. That's a good thing. And it does appear to be working kind of nicely now. Yeah, that's really good, actually. We have tons of stuff that we are still doing kind of jankily, like, I guess, really the ground height is the number one. But yeah, that's kind of nice. What happened there? That didn't look quite right. Let's take a look at what happened there. I think that was a bug. So we went down. Looks like... Ah. Aha. So now we see what the barycentric Y was there for. It was because... This is why taking a week off is rough. I tell you, it's hard programming all day and then coming home and programming. It really taxes your mental state. But now I remember. The reason for that is because we haven't actually done the work yet for speculative collision to handle exits properly, right?
Well, before we do anything to address that, maybe he'll just leave it as is. I don't know. Or maybe he'll take the time here at the end of the day to fix it. But I want to make sure that we don't have any other oopsies in here. Looks good. We're colliding with the edges, but if we go up from the bottom of the staircase, or the ramp, I guess we should say, we just kind of neatly glide onto the next floor. And then, yeah. And then if I hop out over here, yeah, we just kind of you can see we just kind of climb out of the staircase and back onto the floor we were on, which, I mean, I don't really have a problem with that from a gameplay perspective, you know? I feel like you should be able to hop in from, like, the top half of the staircase almost anywhere. Or if you're on the bottom, like, you would climb up. Like, and not even, like, if we weren't thinking of it in terms of a staircase, right? And let's just say it was, like, some terrain that just kind of went up and you had, like, some kind of climb mechanic where you wanted to just kind of hoist yourself up onto the new level or whatever. But it's not what we intended to do, so I can see why he wants to do something about it.
So what we want to do is know what the ground level... We want speculative collide to know whether you're going onto or off of the stairwell, right? Because basically, if you're going off the stairwell, then we need to know what the ground height would be on the outside of the stairwell to know whether or not you could cross it. So, you know, do we want to fix that? Do we not want to fix that? And I'm not really sure. I guess I would say that's the kind of problem that does seem a little tricky to solve, so maybe we should solve it. Let's go ahead and say that tomorrow, looks like we did this today, at least to the extent that we knew about it. It looks like probably what we want to do here is say, and maybe we can do these two things sort of together. We can say, need to make a solid constant of ground level so the camera can be freely placed in Z and multiple ground levels in one sim region. That's the next thing we want to do anyway. What we also will say now is concept of ground in the collision loop so it can handle collisions coming onto and off of stairwells, for example. Because I think that's probably something we should probably get right. It suggests that we want to move this into a little more of a primal spot in the way we handle collisions, where we're thinking about where things will go height-wise and disallowing movements that would be too far height-wise in transition. So I feel like that's probably the right thing to do. So maybe we'll look at that tomorrow. But I think we're pretty much done for the day. We did the thing that I wanted to do today. We did actually both things I wanted to do today. So we're in pretty good shape here. I want to spend a little bit more time getting that stuff right before we move on to anything else. I definitely want to go ahead and make a solid concept of the ground level stuff, and we can do that. You know, we can make sure that flying things can go over walls there as well. Maybe we'll make ourselves be able to fly, and so that we can see whether we can fly over stuff or not. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think we should go ahead and go to the Q&A. Let's take a look here. I think we should go ahead and go to the Q&A.
All right. Well, that was a little unceremonious, I guess. I didn't think we'd be done that fast. Thought I'd have another 10 minutes or so, but another relatively easy day. I'm just something about it's like a combination of the past couple of months being insane because we were making a pretty big life change financially, and there was a lot of red tape around all of that, which was not fun to go through, but it was worth doing, and it's done now, so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm kind of like coming off of the stress of all of that, but also it's cold out, and so it's not fun to be outside, and it's the end of the year. I've just got like some end of the year fatigue, I think, but here in a couple weeks, I think I'm going to take a break from streaming. I know we've already pared back the frequency of the stream to 3 days a week, right? But I need like a clean break from technology in general, I think, is what I'm looking for now. And so I'm going to do that on the same week as Christmas week, and that'll last through New Year's Day, and then I'll be back whatever that Friday is after the holidays. So that's kind of what I'm targeting right now. And that'll be good to have me coming back and then after the new year fresh, and looking forward to making more progress. But until then, we'll keep doing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing. So I'll be back on Wednesday for us to do day 78, and that'll be, I don't even see that up here. Here it is. Multiple collision volumes per entity. So that's what we'll work on next stream, but we're getting really close to the render, and I'm looking forward to that. It should be fun to get into that, because that's like what I really want to settle down and focus on from like a conceptual level. But this stuff too, like with the whole Z and ground thing, I'm going to pay close attention in the Q&A here and make sure that I understand. I think it's just a lot of like very minute calculations that were getting made here and there and everywhere, but it's basically this whole thing right here, like reconciling. And I think he drew this out last week, where he showed, the center point about the entity Z. If you extend the that collision rectangle or whatever, just from the point of origin of the entity, you wind up essentially extending underneath the floor. And that's kind of what all of this stuff is trying to handle, I think, where you want to actually be growing the Z up straight from the point of the origin in X and Y is really what I believe that is, right? Because you want, the ground is where the entity's feet are, but like whatever the center of the entity is, is treated differently based on like what is the actual coordinate in world space. It's weird, kind of heady stuff, abstract stuff to think about, but it's all just math in the end, right? Everybody's favorite subject. So we'll be back on Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out with me for another day of Odinmade Hero. Galactic Past, thank you for that follow earlier. Always try to remember to see when people follow me, but it happens. It'll be weird. We'll get no follows for like a week, and then like 6 people will follow in one day. But that's just how it goes. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.